Greetings to everyone from Medindia. This is Devyanshi welcoming you to another health session. Today we'll be discussing about oral hookworm vaccine and how it can save millions of lives across globally. In today's session, we are joined by our experts, Professor Istvan Toth and Dr. Marius from University of Queensland. Welcome, sir, to Medindia.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hookworm are parasite which causes serious disease in tens of million people across the world. Dr. Marius, along with his teammate, Professor Istvan, is working on oral hookworm vaccine, which could save millions. So I'll start with the very basic question. How hookworm is causing, it's so deadly in millions of lives across globally?
Well, hookworm is not as deadly. It makes the life very unpleasant because what's happening when the hookworm basically gets into your body, start to eat, and it feeds with blood and eats your blood. So it causes basically hemophilia, iron deficiency in your body. So it's a very serious disease, so makes your life very unpleasant. So a very good way to prevent this infection is to basically stop or cut the food source of this microorganism. Obviously, we cannot limit our blood supply, so we have to do something with this microorganism, make this blood unavailable for the microorganism. And the good way is, perhaps I have to say a word, how this hookworm eats. So it eats the blood, and the hookworm has an enzyme, and this special enzyme helps to digest the blood. Now, if we inhibit this enzyme, and we can do it very well with vaccines, basically we stop this enzyme working, stop the hookworm getting food. So in the end, the hookworm starves. You don't need to 100% kill this hookworm, but if we did greatly increase the invasiveness of this microorganism in the body, basically you achieved your aim. Now, initially, you could easily use, like traditionally, a whole microorganism approach or larva approach to basically generate antibody against the whole microorganism, including this enzyme in the microorganism. But this approach could be dangerous because it has really dangerous diverse effect. And traditionally, we could use this enzyme, the whole enzyme I mentioned before, which inhibits the digestion of the blood, which could be easily produced like it's produced routinely now with recombinant ways using microorganism to make this protein. But this protein can have really side effects, serious side effects as well. Now, our approach is to use only a fragment of this protein. It's a peptide sequence to generate antibody. And this antibody, which recognizes the small part of this protein, this peptide, recognizes the whole protein in the microorganism, inhibiting this enzyme in the microorganism. And in the end, we basically starve the microorganism. Now, the great advantage of this small peptide-based antigen is that it's fully synthetic, very easy to make, it's stable, can be transported all over the world, doesn't have any side effect, and basically is cheap.
Since we are discussing about oral hookworm vaccine in today's session, so how it is different from the traditional vaccine that we have been hearing all this while?
Okay, so I briefly mentioned it before, that if you use whole microorganism or a whole protein of this microorganism, it can have different side effects. So that's why we use a small peptide sequence, and this peptide sequence is coupled to a special carrier adjuvant system, makes the whole system amphiphilic and hydrophobic, can form nanoparticles, And this nanoparticle basically can be orally administered into the microorganism. It would be obviously effective by injection, but if you administer them orally, obviously it has many advantages. So the major discovery in our side is we use a small, non-dangerous, very easily synthesizable part of this protein.
So since the vaccine is already into preclinical trial, is there some anticipated side effects also of the oral hookworm vaccine?
I mentioned before that the side effect when you use whole microorganism or use the whole protein, you can expect side effect. If you use our very simple, like a chemical composition, we don't expect any dangerous side effect to appear.
So the alternate vaccine for hookworm reduces the number of worms by 30 to 40%. But when it comes to oral hookworm vaccine, it reduces by 94%. So can you please explain our viewers the components of the oral hookworm vaccine and how does it works?
So, as Isvan said already, we are targeting enzyme which is called APR1, and we are not using whole this enzyme which is responsible for digestion of the blood. We are using just very small fragment of it. So we are generating antibody to focus only on this fragment. What is important, if antibody is attached to this fragment, the enzyme could not work. So hookworm could not digest blood. Therefore, we target our immune system to work only on one specific fragment of protein instead of producing many different antibody against whole protein or other proteins. We just produce practically almost monoclonal, very close to monoclonal antibody, which are very effective. And that's most likely the reason why our vaccine is so effective, because it's only producing antibody which is needed instead of producing whole range of antibody, which are some are effective, some are not effective. And we were getting very good level of this one antibody, which were effective up to almost neutralizing efficacy to eliminate more than 90% of the hookworm in the mice experiments after oral delivery. We also did comparison of this enzyme together with our vaccine using injection, and we get much better efficacy with our simple peptide-based vaccine than using this whole protein. Do you need any more specific information about this?
I guess a lot of viewers would know about vaccine research begins with the preclinical trial on animals. What animals are you working upon?
Yes, every vaccine research starts way before the animal experiments with preclinical examinations in test tubes, checking the stability, uptake, and later with different tissues, cells. So before we go to animal, we have to know that this compound is active, this compound is effective, and this compound is relatively harmless. Then we start with small animals, as we have started with small animals. Normally this animal is mice. And then we have positive results on this little animal experiment. Then we go to bigger animals. A very good model for hookworm infection is hamsters. Now, hamsters, in our Australian point of view, it's a complicated issue because you cannot import hamsters in Australia, so we have to collaborate with international colleagues to go to the next level. And then when the hamster experiments completed, then we go to bigger animals and primates, and that's the normal, every kind of very usual way to go to the clinics. But as we go further in this stage, the experiments start, and the experiment and the whole procedure start to be more and more expensive, almost exponentially. So on the stage, we then go to the clinic, basically leave the preclinical stage, we need partners. But at the moment, we are in the middle of preclinical examination, so we are not in the clinics yet.
So as you mentioned that you are in the middle of preclinical trial, now can we ask that what is going to be roadmap of this vaccine that's coming for public use very soon?
So like in every other cases, to bring a product to the market, it's a long procedure. Obviously, when you have a very kind of dangerous disease, when you have to basically shorten the regulatory kind of strict rules, there is exception. For example, if somebody is in the last stage of cancer disease, obviously you can make short cycles, but in a normal way, this drug or vaccine trial from the lab to the clinics and to the market takes about 10 to 15 years. And it costs about $1 to $1.5 billion. So to answer your question, we are right in the very beginning. We are basically the tens of thousands kind of expenditure level. If you want to go higher, we need now hundreds of thousands to go to bigger animals, and then after obviously the partner to be able to develop this product further in humans.
We just hope that, as you defined it would take many years to come, but we hope that it comes very soon for public use, because as you said, that it's going to save millions across globally. So when we talk about vaccines, so there are a lot of problems that comes to handling of the vaccine storage. But since this is different from the traditional vaccines, so how this will be stable at normal temperatures?
So if you have, for example, now the famous is mRNA-based vaccines need to be stored in -80. However, mRNA is very unstable molecule compared to peptides. Peptides generally are stable at room temperature. Of course, it needs to be examined for how long, if they can stay in room temperature for 1 month or 10 years. This need to be checked for each individual vaccine, but we expected that our vaccine can stay for years in normal fridge, and for several weeks, it will no any problem for room temperature. And even if we may achieve completely, safety storage in room temperature, it's also possible. So generally, I do not think that this will be any problem with our type of vaccine. You need to take account that our vaccine is built from peptide and nothing else. There is no any additives, there is no any adjuvant. There are only 3 components in this peptide vaccine which do all the job.
So once all the research response from the immune system, since right now you're working on particular kind of animal, but what kind of response for the immune system you're observing?
So as Isfan said, we are targeting protein, and I also talk about this with antibody. So our vaccine generally has 3 components. Talking a little more scientifically, has B-cell epitope, T-helper epitope, and polyleucin with us as an adjuvant. This adjuvant is helping for vaccine to be recognized by our system. T-helper epitope is helping B-cells to produce antibody. So we have all these components to produce strong antibody-based response, and this antibody are later responsible to block activity of this enzyme. That's whole design, and that's whole the mechanism how it's working.
So there are many reasons for causing hookworms. So my question is that once a person has taken these vaccines, the oral hookworm vaccine, how much it cuts the possibility of again causing hookworm in the person?
I need one more thing I need to only explain, because maybe this is missing from our story. We have antibody in our blood. Hookworm is not coming to our blood, yes, but hookworm is sucking our blood. So the antibody, which are coming from our blood, goes to the hookworm digestive system. That's how it's blocking. I think this was missing from explanation, from my previous explanation.
So could you please repeat your question? I think it was that hookworm can infect you in many different ways, but when your hookworm is there, the hookworm basically eats your blood, and that's what you have to stop. Now, the question is, how do we stop it? As Emilio said before, we designed this vaccine. We administer this vaccine in human case. In our vaccine, fortunately, if you administer it orally, so as a tablet, is a quickly dissolving tablet, you don't need to inject this vaccine in the body, take it orally. And when you take it orally, it generates antibody, and this antibody will be eaten by the hookworm, and the antibody, which now inside the hookworm, will block this special enzyme. Now, how much vaccine do we need? I think that how can we stop this hookworm infection? we normally immunize, and not we, the whole world immunizes orally using maximum a milligram of a vaccine candidate, normally much less. Now, this should be enough to decrease dramatically the hookworm amount in your body. And the decrease and the small amount of hookworm that is there, it even can be can have different health advantages, since hookworm secretes enzyme, certain enzyme, which is actually good for our body. So some people basically have this hookworm and they don't want to get rid of it because this has definite advantages. So the vaccination major aim to decrease the amount of hookworm in the body in a relatively cheap way.
But also answering your question, you may need to have a boost because oral vaccine, it's not that kind of aggressive. It's not activating very strongly immune system at once. So very often for oral vaccine, you need to have boost later. So you need to have more than one dose.
Yeah, it means that after 2-3 weeks, you have to use this tablet again, which again, I don't think it's a problem.
Absolutely. When it comes to vaccine, there is a vaccine phobia. For example, when COVID vaccine was released, so a lot of time people were not going to take the vaccination. So would you think that the same vaccine phobia will be with the oral hookworm vaccine? What will be your advice?
Well, it depends, I think, mainly because of you and other journalists, because the vaccine phobia in general, it didn't caused by the vaccine itself, it's caused by the press, because I have no idea. I doesn't have the slightest idea even what's happening around my university after vaccination. Only reason, only way I know, if the news tells me, you tell me. So the vaccine phobia, I think, is the reason, the main reason for the vaccine phobia is the bad press. But returning back to this one, this is a harmless vaccine. You take it orally, you take a peptide. You eat peptides every day. Some peptide is allergic, what you eat, you know that you have some food you're allergic to. It can be some kind of allergic reaction. No one knows. It's a small peptide. We don't expect any side effect. Vaccine phobia, it's a dangerous thing in general. Obviously, in some cases, health reason explain. Well, it has a real reason. But if you think about smallpox, when it doesn't happen, or think about other dangerous diseases, including even the flu, without the vaccination, the world would be wiped out by now. So not completely, but the vaccination is one of the greatest blessings for the human life, I think. And kind of intelligent people who working on the same area should be on the press much more often and explain the effect, possible side effect, the pros and contras. I think the major vaccine phobia against today's vaccine is the lack of information. We don't know, well, we do, but the people normally don't know what they can expect. What is the mRNA? What does it do? How does it decompose? So the lack of knowledge is the major cause of this vaccine phobia, I guess.
But just to add a few sentences, so as this one said, our vaccine is built from peptides, means the peptides are part of our proteins. Proteins are just meat. So this is not much different as a component what we are normally eating every day. So it's kind of, you do not expect anything wrong with it. Second one about allergy, hookworm can cause allergy, but the protein which we are choosing are known to not cause any side effect, allergic side effect. There are some other hookworm protein which are dangerous. That's why we could not use whole hookworm, because it's causing allergic side effects. So in our case, we do not expect any such situation, and public are generally much more kind of feel safe with eating something than injecting. So I think this kind of vaccine can be easily accepted by public.
Definitely, and as Professor Iswan said, that the right kind of information needs to be circulated with what are the components and pros and cons. And I guess Medindia is doing an effort in reaching a lot of people with the right kind of information and right kind of researches that's going on. We are coming to the end of the session. We have discussed a lot of aspects about oral hookworm vaccine. Since we are in the end, research that we are talking about and how it's going to be available in a few years.
Well, as you know, peptides are now very easily can be produced with huge factories, hundreds of kilos at once, at a relatively cheap price. As I told you before, for one vaccination, you need less than a milligram of compound. 1 gram is 1,000 doses. 1 kilogram is 1 billion doses. So basically, couple of kilograms of peptide can basically immunize the people in the dangerous places really quickly and relatively cheaply. So the manufacturing part, I don't think it's a problem because nothing special about the peptide compound, which will be used as a vaccine.
Dr. Marius, if you want to add something to this.
No, I think I'm fine with this fun explanation. Is that more or less what's the situation?
Thank you so much, Professor Istvan and Dr. Marius, for joining us and discussing the various aspects of oral hookworm vaccine. And I guess the right kind of information and the research that you are carrying on, it's going to reach a lot of people. Thank you so much for joining in this health session by Medindia.
Thank you
very much.
Yeah, have a good day.